Welcome to This Week in Wrestling History.
All right, everyone, welcome to This Week in Wrestling History. As always, we're your hosts, Jacob and Ryan.
Yo.
And we're back with another episode.
Yeah, this one might be a little different.
Yeah, we're a little heated this week, so
This might be a little more grouchy than we usually are.
Well, at least we're laughing now, so we'll get that out of the way. That's all good. Absolutely nothing to do wrestling related, just, work, life, holiday seasons, all that fun stuff. So
Yeah.
we're about stressed out to our limits, so we're going to unleash on some old wrestling stuff and get it off our chest, I guess. Sounds like a good plan.
It'll be an interesting episode with that, plus the episode of Raw that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I definitely got things to say about that episode and some things about the wrestling business in general. I think that it kind of made me think about here.
So I think we should start off with a little back and forth about Raw from this week.
Okay.
Uh,
So the lowest ever rated Raw in history, until next week.
right. And it's funny because I actually went through and I read an article where it had all of the ratings listed.
Uh-huh.
There wasn't even anything close to this. Like even last week's where it was bad and it was the lowest.
Oh, we're like record
This
setting.
beat it real bad.
We're rocket strapped on the way down.
Yeah. It's definitely not a great look. 2.1 million viewers total for all 3 hours.
Total.
Ugh. Whereas last week
Uh-huh.
was, I want to say 2.6 or 2.7.
Oh, so they only dropped 500,000 viewers.
Right. Which is kind of shocking.
Oh, I'm sure that's fine when that's, 20% of your audience.
Right.
So, all right. Anyways, why don't you get into what you enjoyed about this, and then I'll see what I have to say about that.
So out of 2 weeks of Raw, the only thing that I liked, I wouldn't even say that I liked it, but I could appreciate it, was the Seth Rollins promo at the beginning of this week. It seemed like it was something straight out of 90s WCW playbook, and it was this show is bad. We know why it's bad. We're doing this, this, and this. But you should still watch us because of this.
Sure, and how well did that work out for late 90s WCW?
I mean, it pushed them in the right direction. At this point,
No, it didn't.
they ended up winning for 83 weeks?
So that was before. So when WCW started doing the, hey, this whole thing sucks, is when Vince Russo was in there. And actually wasn't late 90s, it was 2000.
Okay.
The year they died. That's what was happening when they died. That was when Bischoff and Russo and all of the giant booking crew that they ended up with were all arguing with each other.
Kevin Nash.
That's when that was. It was Russo coming in and saying, hey, all this other stuff sucked. Hulk Hogan sucks. Get out of here. Take your stupid belt and get out. We're going to just start over with a new champ.
And I don't think by any means we're saying that WWE is going to die coming soon.
Oh, no.
But it was definitely different because I wasn't around I shouldn't say I wasn't around. I wasn't a fan of wrestling during that.
So
hearing the gripes that, like, almost word for word that I read on Reddit, like the day before, was a little curious, to say the least.
So, yes, it's nice that it kind of feels like the fans, the smart fans especially, have a voice in Seth Rollins. Here's the problem. Assume Baron Corbin was being a direct mouthpiece for Vince McMahon. Cool. I understand you have all these problems. I don't care.
Yeah.
That's the problem with that whole thing.
The only thing that I can hope to salvage out of any of this is that the doofus son-in-law will eventually get reigns because of how bad Raw has been.
That's really our only hope at this point, is that Raw gets tanked so hard that all of the main card talent gets shuffled over to SmackDown for Fox, and NXT just comes up and basically replaces Raw at this point.
That I don't think will ever happen.
I don't think it will either, but it's really our only hope at this point.
However, I think that a change of things when SmackDown goes to Fox is going to be warranted. It like long overdue, I should say.
Yeah.
Like a shifting of the roster. Maybe when Roman Reigns comes back, he doesn't go straight to Raw. He goes to SmackDown. Seeing
both shows treated equally would be nice because they're both treated better than 205 and better than NXT, but
however, SmackDown is pulling in better ratings than Raw. Well, I should say on par. I don't have any strict data to say that this week's episode of SmackDown did better than this week of Raw.
My concern there is I don't think that's what moves the needle as far as Vince is concerned, and if it does, it's almost bad because it's not being done in his way, so it's going to get tampered with.
No, the only thing that moves the needle in Vince's eyes is dollar signs. I think that's all it's ever been for Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that he has a passion for the business, but I think it's if he does have it, it's been buried deep down somewhere where he can't touch it anymore.
At this point, are we basically hoping that Vince shifts his eye to the XFL full time and just leaves WWE and
up to Triple H?
in the doofus's
absolutely.
hands? Yeah.
And in case you don't know, go watch the Pipe Bomb promo by CM Punk. He references Triple H.
If you're listening to this, you probably know what the Pipe Bomb promo is.
I would hope so, but just in case it's out of your mind, go watch it. He calls Triple H the doofus son-in-law. But anyway, I could only hope that Triple H completely takes over and starts to essentially make Raw and SmackDown his vision that he started with NXT.
So, even on Raw right now, what are the main problems that are causing this viewership drop? Like, there's been some decent stuff, especially within the last, so the Universal title, clearly a huge giant problem there.
Right.
Besides that, what isn't really being done right that they have control over? So, Sami Zayn and KO being hurt, they don't really have control over that.
Fair. But they do have control over the stories and where they're placing people on the card.
So who's not in a good spot right now? So
Finn Balor.
Finn seems to be doing okay. He's
considering that he's sick, from what I've read. I don't know what happened with that, but they end up replacing him with Apollo Crews in the Mixed Match Challenge, and then Bayley tanks because of it.
So okay, so Mixed Match Challenge doesn't really matter for Raw.
It would have if they had won and gone on to be number 30 in the Rumble.
Yeah, they can still fix that after the fact. Whoever wins the Mixed Match Challenge can still lose that quote-unquote prize easily enough.
The other thing I would say with Finn Balor is that he's not booked strong.
I mean, he took out Corbin
barely.
Go back a couple months at the pay-per-view. He took him out in under 2 minutes when he came out as the Demon.
Yeah, this is also the guy who he beat the guy who is one of two people to fail at a Money in the Bank cash-in and looked like an absolute moron doing it.
Yeah.
Corbin is not the strongest. If you want to put somebody over, you don't put him against Corbin.
No. Corbin is awful right now. Like, objectively, I think he's awful. Subjectively, I think he's pretty bad, too.
I don't think he's that bad. I like his character as the interim GM because it's reminding me of Eric Bischoff-ish, which was always fun.
It would be great, but the problem is I'm dying for someone to come out and point out the fact that you used to be the lone wolf, and now you were balding, so his character is so easy to cut down.
Yeah.
That I don't think it's...
And somebody should definitely do it.
Yeah.
But then allow him the opportunity to, well, I'm the interim GM. You're suspended. Or something. You got a match against so-and-so who's going to beat you up and eat you alive.
Yeah, but the problem is he's still supposed to be a wrestler. That doesn't... You can get comeuppance way too easily against that. You're supposed to be... Like, the heel GM works when you're kind of a...
I can't be touched.
Right,
thing.
I can't be touched because I have all of this blockading you from doing anything against me. Whereas it's tough for... Corbin's a big dude.
Yeah,
it's
but
tough for a big dude to do that properly.
It wouldn't be that hard for him because then he could be like, well, whoever he's facing off against could be like, well, let's have a match. And he'd be like, oh, I don't feel like it. I book the shows. You don't.
Yeah.
They could do different things with it. I would much rather them also rocket strap Drew McIntyre a lot faster than they already are.
Okay, so let me go back to Finn for a second. If he's sick or whatever, be that as may, he's still tied in with the Baron Corbin thing, which is pretty much your main program on the show right now.
Yeah. That's only because Braun's not there right now.
Well, sure.
The minute Braun shows up, Balor's going to take a back seat and disappear into the undercard again.
Possibly. Drew, again, he's still tied in with that Corbin.
Yeah, but I think it brings back to there needs to be a main belt. It needs to be on somebody, and there needs to be something happening with it.
Is it possible that just the main belt not being there is enough to tank the entire show?
I mean, look at SmackDown. You have this.
You have a title change on the program
for arguably the most prestigious title in the business.
Yeah.
And this week you start off the show with a match that I didn't know I wanted, but now that I've seen it, I need like 3 more of them.
Yeah, so it is entirely possible that not having the belt on the main show, like this isn't 1987 anymore. We can't have Hulk Hogan not showing up on Superstars. Like,
right.
Who gives a crap about that?
But then if you also go back and look at SmackDown, the tag title division is relatively fleshed out. It makes sense. And it's they do different things with it, but it's exciting either way. Whereas on Raw, you have Bobby Roode and Chad Gable as the Raw champions now after they beat AOP randomly.
Wait, they actually won the belts on Monday?
They did. Because AOP was defending it under quote-unquote Lucha House Party rules, which Drake Maverick was in the match and got launched like a lawn dart over the top rope. Yeah, so they ended up winning the belt, which why...
I didn't understand that. I was reading a review, and I thought that was just a 2-on-3 match.
Nope. It was a 2-on-3 match for the belts, and Rude and Gable won.
I am so direly upset right now.
So you have a division like that especially on Raw, you could make some decent tag teams. You have some decent tag teams already. Why not use them? But instead, SmackDown is the better in the tag division because they actually have, granted it's the same 3 teams as before, but it's still good chemistry between all 3 teams.
They're so good together that we can have those 3 teams going at it in any combination for a while.
It's essentially ENC, the Dudleys, and Team Extreme all over again with the New Day, the Bar, and the Usos.
That's fair. That's a pretty fair comparison, and there's even a few more tag teams kind of off in the wings on SmackDown that are pretty respectable.
Right. Like Sanity,
the Hammer Brothers,
well,
they're done being injured, yeah.
Yeah. But so you have that division that's clearly SmackDown's winning. SmackDown's also winning the women's division, hands down, solely because of Becky.
I mean,
no arguments.
Light years better. The women's division on Raw is a hot mess for many reasons, so fair enough.
The only thing that I would say Raw is winning right now is the mid-card picture. Because Seth has the IC belt, Nakamura has the US belt, and Nakamura has done shit with it.
It's been facing Rusev. That's not nothing.
Okay, but since he's had 2 matches against Rusev, and he's had the belt for 4 months.
Yeah, 3-4 months now, definitely. So, all right. Anyways, let's go back in time to when Raw was good. Maybe
when it was starting to be good.
All right, we're gonna go back to December 15th, 1997, Monday Night Raw. We're a week removed from the most recent pay-per-view of In Your House number whatever, Degeneration X.
Yeah, and this may seem like a very random Raw for us to pick for this week, but something dramatic happened on this.
Well, in the very first match, which we don't open with the first match, so we'll get to it in a second, but something historic happens in that match as well. But so first off, we open with Michael Cole, super young Michael Cole,
babyface Michael Cole,
in the ring, and The Undertaker comes out for an interview. Undertaker comes out in about, I don't know, takes 3 or 4 solid minutes for him to walk to the ring.
He does his dead man talk the entire time.
That was my comment on this, was boring, growling Undertaker promo.
Yeah, his promos got better later on. Especially when he was the biker.
Right. Once the American Badass thing hits, it starts getting a lot better. Once that whole Vince McMahon kiss my ass club comes around, and Undertaker goes heel during that whole thing, so much better once he starts talking and
he's talking like a normal guy.
Right. Last week when we were talking about the Vengeance 2001 thing, he was so much better at cutting a promo there.
Yeah.
Like that promo that they showed on Vengeance 2001 where he was talking to JR. It's like everyone kissed Vince McMahon's ass. Brett did it. Shawn did it. I did it more than anyone. Were you going to kiss his ass, JR? Hell no. You think you're better than me?
Right.
Oh, crap. That was a great promo.
And it took people by surprise enough, and I think the delivery of it was much better than what we were getting now. Because it was still he's a dead man.
He was still he was getting there. We've already had the Hell in a Cell match with Shawn.
He wasn't, I mean, this wasn't even in the midst of the corporate ministry yet, where he's talking a little more fluidly. It was still him doing the dead Texas man talk.
Yeah.
Which, it fit the character, but you could have sped it up just a tad, and you could have done a little bit
it was just
better.
kind of long, droning. It didn't really go anywhere. It was just it wasn't great.
Right.
It's interrupted by Kane and Paul Bearer. They come out, and Paul Bearer cuts a better promo in his annoying, shrill voice.
Yeah, but again, that was something that none of this really made sense for the overall story of it didn't need to happen.
So, yeah, that was one of the biggest problems actually the writers were having at this point in time. This was when Vince Russo was actually first starting to get involved in things.
Ugh.
And the idea was Undertaker and Kane were supposed to face off at Mania, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem was the program started back in September, October, and it's supposed to last until April. They're already in the ring hitting each other at this point. Kane comes in and slaps the taste out of Undertaker's mouth, then goes for another one. Taker stops it and walks off. But within the next couple of weeks, they start putting each other through the announce table.
Right, which is far, far too early in a program that has to last another 5 months.
Yeah, another 3-4 months. Yeah, exactly. All right, so then we go to commercial. We come back with our 3-man announce booth, which I forgot that the 3-man announce booth had been around for so long, which I'm pretty sure it stopped for a while after this, but...
Correct, because this was when Jerry Lawler was actually wrestling a little bit more.
Right, so our 3-man announce booth was good old JR, Kevin Kelly, and Michael Cole. What an annoying 3-person booth this is. JR barely got anything in at all during the first half of the show.
Yeah, I liked Kevin Kelly a little bit.
He was okay.
He filled a role and he did that role relatively well. But give me JR and King any day.
Oh yeah, they were much better, and just JR barely got anything in with these two guys out there just because they were trying to get so much stuff over. And annoyingly, a lot of pop culture they were trying to shoehorn in, I noticed.
Yeah, it was a little awkward.
Yeah. So, anyways, our first match was Jerry the King Lawler versus Taka Michinoku.
Which, for how they used him, Taco deserved better.
He got decent. Like, they gave him quite a bit. They didn't give him a great spot in the card, but for where he was, he was protected pretty well.
Yeah, he still deserved better in my book.
Yeah, his offense was crazy good. He at one point drop kicks Lawler to the outside and hits a springboard plancha, and he just didn't like run up the turnbuckles. He just went from standing on the mat, ran, jumped, hit the top rope, and then just jumped right off. Taka's not that tall, and the ring ropes in WWE are pretty tall.
Yeah, it's quite a bit of a hop to get up there.
It's not like in Japan where if you kind of pay attention to the ring differences, where the ring apron first of all comes up to is much lower in Japan typically, and then where the turnbuckles are is also lower. So the top rope in Japan is maybe 3.5 feet high.
Yeah.
Whereas in WWE, it's closer to 4.5 feet.
Which you can tell in reference to when Alexa Bliss is standing in the ring.
Right.
It's at her nose level, essentially, and she's 5 foot.
Right, exactly. If you're watching like a promo even now, like it's almost up to Farouk's shoulder.
Yeah.
He's not a small guy by any means. The ropes are just higher, so it looks more impressive when they're jumping off and doing things.
Right.
So it's why you're also a little bit more apt to see someone like, say, Kenny Omega when he's doing his senton over the top rope in New Japan and he's just clearing that top rope by a good foot. It looks super impressive, but not actually as difficult as if you had tried to do it in a WWE ring.
Right. It's a little different when Finn Balor does it in a WWE ring and still clears it by a good 6 inches.
Exactly. It's a little bit more impressive, so it's something to pay attention to. So anyways, the original point here, really impressive when Taka was just jumping to the top and then flying off. So
it was also relatively impressive seeing Taka pick up Jerry Lawler, who had a good almost 50 pounds on him, and hit him with a suplex brainbuster kind of thing.
His finisher?
No, it was a little bit before that.
Oh, okay. I was about to say he hit the Michinoku driver, which is like a sit-out slam.
Yeah, it was a little bit before that. Again, I still think Taka deserved a little better, especially
overall in the grand scheme of things, given how talented Taka Michinoku is. Yes, but
I mean, he's still wrestling occasionally now, and he's Zack Sabre Jr.'s manager in New Japan. So,
given the time period, given how awful Vince was with foreign talent, Taka definitely he did the best anyone could have hoped for him in that position, even if that wasn't as much as someone would have wanted.
Right.
Shinsuke is doing better, but because people like Taka paved the way.
Right. So, where did we go after this?
Up next, we had The Nation come out because The Rock wants his IC belt back from Austin because last week, Austin forfeited the IC championship to The Rock in the ring.
Yeah, because Stone Cold comes out and says, I've beaten him before. I'm not going to wrestle him again. Here, you can just have the belt.
Which, in and of itself, is a little weird to devalue the belt like Austin doesn't even care. I think the idea was him kind of showing his contempt for the WWF.
But the thing is that if it was any two other guys, I would agree with you. Granted, this is still early on to him being The Rock, but this is middle Stone Cold stuff.
Right. We are just starting to talk about being the people's champion.
Right. And we're at the point where the Mania following this in April is Stone Cold versus Shawn with Mike Tyson.
Correct.
So you have two very different levels of where they are in their careers.
Right. Austin was on his. They were both on their way up. Just Austin was going there first, so he was a little bit ahead of The Rock in terms of things. So he was kind of like, okay, I do need to get through this whole thing. And
But again, if it was any two other guys, like if this thing happened between The Miz and Curtis Axel back in the day, you would have devalued it quite a bit more.
fair enough.
But WWE clearly saw something in The Rock at this point. Obviously, they saw something in Stone Cold.
Clearly.
So it was something different when it was these two guys, quote unquote, devaluing the belt.
Right. So, anyways, Nation comes out. Rock says he wants his belt. Farouk tries to get some words in. Rock totally just cuts him right off. He calls out Austin. Austin comes out to the stage. They bicker back and forth a little bit. Austin says, "Go find yourself a monitor. You'll see what I did with your belt."
Right. And The Rock turns around and says, "Well, you got 1 hour to bring it back to me."
Yeah, you got 1 hour to get me my belt. All right. Next up, we have our second match of the evening: Dude Love versus the Road Dogg, Jesse James.
So one of the historic things that happens during this...
Oh, wait. Actually, I forgot our first match was historic. And JR said it was historic. It was one of Jerry Lawler's. It was his first dropkick of the 90s.
Oh, really?
It was just some dumb commentary thing. He said, mark your calendars. It's Jerry the King's first dropkick of the 90s. So,
Jeez.
all right. Anyways, Dude Love versus Road Dogg.
So semi-historic thing. We have Road Dogg and Billy Gunn actually being named the New Age Outlaws.
Right. So JR brings that up. So Road Dogg comes out. Billy Gunn goes over to the announce table to do some commentary while his buddy's in the ring there. And JR says, "You guys are like the New Age Outlaws." And they're like, "I like that name. That has a good ring to it. Yeah, let's use that."
Glad I came up with it.
Yeah. So this was also the New Age Outlaws coming out in their South Park shirts, and Cole going to JR, "Hey, that's your favorite show, right?" He's like, I wouldn't know anything about that. It's just these awful, forced pop culture references.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, as we move on through the match, a couple of pretty bad shots to Mick Foley here, especially when he gets thrown off the stage at the end.
Yeah, so the New Age Outlaws Mick ends up getting the win again, I think. So he's now beaten each of them individually. They get into a big brawl. They fight up the stage. I think they suplex him on the stage, or they DDT him on the stage.
Yep, and then they toss him off of the stage.
And then they throw a ref into him, and the ref bumps him off the side of the stage. So he goes crashing into a plastic table and then into the concrete.
Yeah, and this is flat staged WWE like it is now. So the stage was raised 6-7 feet off the ground.
Yeah, I'd say about 7 feet off the ground.
Which is not, it doesn't seem that high. But when you come flying off of it and there's nothing below you except a plastic table and concrete.
It's higher than I want to fall off of.
Right. And Foley only tips the table over. He doesn't actually go through it and takes the hip straight to the concrete.
Well, it was a plastic. There was no way he was going through that. It was a plastic table. It wasn't like your classic particle board tables that they normally put people through. It was a plastic, like, church table.
I mean, if I'm going to take the bump, I'm going to aim for the table as much as I possibly can because I'd rather hit plastic over concrete.
Oh, definitely. And anything to take some of the impact. I think overall he was probably fine from it, obviously, but
I mean,
it weren't fun.
Wasn't his worst bump, but wasn't one that I'd like to take.
Exactly. Okay. Anywho, next up we have Mark Henry's Raw debut versus the Brooklyn Brawler.
And this was significantly after his pay-per-view debut against Jerry Lawler.
Right.
We talked about that recently.
Yeah, so it was actually a year prior to this. He had gotten injured. He hurt his ankle.
That's right.
And it was some of that, but I think majority of what it was, they wanted to send him back for more training.
Yeah, and from that Jerry Lawler match, you could tell that he needed it.
Definitely.
the Brooklyn Brawler match tonight was a little better.
Yeah, it was a little better, as you said.
But again, it's somebody who's going to need a little bit more time to work things out.
And clearly he eventually did.
Right. I mean, Hall of Famer, World Heavyweight Champion.
Yeah. I mean, guy had a good run.
Yeah.
So, all right. Coming up next was something that's probably going to start me rambling on something here. It was the end of our first hour, but it was a video package. And a very weird video package. So it was a video package of Owen Hart having the last 2 weeks, starting with the previous pay-per-view, the Degeneration X in Your House, coming in out of the crowd, running in, knocking Shawn Michaels off the ring apron, putting him through a table, just kind of assaulting Shawn Michaels. But it was in black and white, and it was set to Duran Duran's Come Undone.
I mean,
so
good song.
I love the song, but it's that kind of weird late 80s, early 90s, real heavy like on the synth and bass, and it's like a weird song.
It definitely a weird choice for this package.
Right. So it was almost like it's a very almost kind of like emotionally intense song.
That makes sense.
Kind of like it'd be almost more appropriate in some sort of like drama where there was like some sense of heartbreak, some sense of like just sorrow or emotional pain, which actually does make sense in the context of what Owen is going through, especially in regards to Brett legitimately got screwed
and leaving him.
And left the company. Bulldog and Jim Neidhart did leave as well. I think Brett or Vince probably went, yeah, I'm not going to fight you guys breaking your contract on this whole thing.
Yeah.
Owen stayed behind and actually ends up getting a bit of a push for kind of sticking it out.
Right.
So the emotion behind that totally makes sense. Even the title of it, Come Undone, kind of makes sense for Owen just being like, you know, raw, ragged, emotional. But we're in the beginning of the Attitude Era where kind of emotion isn't really in the cards for WWF. We're pretty much at the toilet humor, over the top, Jerry Springer style of stuff, and just aggression. Yes. Just, yeah, that deeply emotional stuff doesn't fit, and it just felt weird and out of place.
It would have made a lot more sense for that to happen now, especially if you're going for something in NXT, for instance.
Sure.
But back then...
even in like the mid-2000s, kind of like when the Edge and Matt Hardy thing happened.
Yeah, something like that would have been much better. Again, not a terrible choice for this video package, but...
Right. Like I said,
could have been better.
I liked it conceptually from like a very artsy level. I think that's maybe my problem, is that it's a very it was an artsy package. WWF at the time was not
It was not artsy at all.
Yeah, they were not artsy. They were not subtle. Everything was dull, hit you over the head, hit you in the face with it. Puppies, TNA, just everything about it was not subtle, and this was a very subtle thing to try to do. Very artsy, very emotional, and it didn't fit. So that bothered me, and that's what made me start thinking. Here comes the rambling part.
Now what's happening?
Yes. So, and we discussed this a little bit earlier, but in the context of wrestling as a storytelling medium, it's very weird because we never get closure on storylines or characters, really. Yeah, somewhat on storylines, but never really characters.
No, when it comes to the storylines, you're mostly getting, I wouldn't even say closure. You're getting an end of an arc.
You get like the end of a chapter, but it's not like the end of the book ever comes.
Right. And each book you have is a character or one of the wrestlers. And it's literally just okay, so that chapter ended, moving on to the next feud, moving on to the next story.
Right, which on one hand is kind of neat because think like the whole fight forever chance. Or
I mean, especially when you have somebody like Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn.
yeah, which that's kind of cool. Yes, it's cool that the story kind of keeps going. Think about some of your favorite TV shows or movies or animes or book series. You're always kind of like, ooh, I wanted more of that.
Yeah, especially some of the ones that end abruptly after 12 episodes or so.
Right, like there's some shows out there you get like one season and you never get anything more.
Or 3 seasons and then it gets canceled. Daredevil.
But you want, so take Firefly for instance from Fox.
Oh,
Cool, they actually did get some closure when they made the movie. And so maybe was it what you fully wanted? No, but it was nice to have a bit of closure to their stories.
right.
You don't get that in wrestling.
No, you get guy beat other guy. Guy then goes on to face different guy, and then eventually 2 years later faces same guy again.
Right. So let's take John Cena for example. Like if you're really behind John Cena's climb to the top, you're with him through the whole awful rapper thing, becoming U.S. champ,
Yep.
and then fighting, was it JBL? I'm guessing he probably ended up facing for the belt the first time he got it or something.
Yep.
Cool. You're with him through that struggle. He finally does it. He wins that championship. Okay. What happens next week now?
Yeah, you've reached the climax of the story.
Right. That story hit its pinnacle. But the story doesn't end there.
Nope.
And you can't necessarily just retire that. You can't take John Cena, the person, retire the character, and have John Cena come back as...
It's the prototype.
Right, exactly. You can't have him really come... In wrestling, you can't really just have someone come back quite as easily. Yes, you can do it like Kane has been a fair number of characters, but...
Yeah, and you even have somebody like more recently. You have somebody like Roman Reigns, who was kind of the quiet guy, the muscle in the Shield,
Yeah.
and then slowly becomes the quote unquote
the big dog.
big dog. And then when the Shield comes back, he's still the big dog, but he's still the quiet guy of the Shield.
Yeah, he kind of like becomes almost a hybrid of the two type things, but
it's
there's
more. Nowadays, it's more subtle.
yeah, there's no clear delineation of this storyline is over. Now we're starting the new storyline, which, again, I get in the genre of wrestling you can't really do, but part of me misses like a nice dramatic finish and putting a bow on everything. And
Right.
like, yes, you get those giant, like the WrestleMania moment that's super cathartic, and hey, like the Daniel Bryan winning the belts thing, that was great.
But what happens on Monday after that?
Exactly. Like the story still has to go on, and it's tough to really enjoy that moment as much as you could. I think those moments could be even bigger if there was some sort of finality to them. I mean,
To be honest, I wouldn't even know how to have any kind of finality in wrestling.
right. I mean, about the best you get is maybe Ric Flair being retired by Shawn Michaels, which isn't even his full final thing because he goes to TNA.
Right. Or you have Taker retiring Shawn, which isn't really final because he just had another match with him.
Yeah, it was great, and it lasted for 8 years, and then, oh, now we have an extra thing going on.
Right.
It's like, oh, someone paid enough money. Now it's different again.
Right. It's one of those things where I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but
Right.
it would be nice to happen.
Right, and it's one of those, like, I don't think it's a quote-unquote bug in wrestling. It is a feature that it never really ends.
Right.
But I think it would have been cool at some points if a character could have been retired and we wrap this up and you can kind of come back with a new thing later on. And I don't know. Just something I was thinking about when I started watching this whole thing and started thinking a little bit more about the business of wrestling and the storytelling of wrestling than just...
Which it makes sense. But again, I wouldn't even know how you would go about that.
Right. Yeah. And again, I'm not saying that we even should. I was just thinking that could be neat. All right. Anyways, after the Owen video package, we start hour number 2. Well, or we change programs entirely. I don't know exactly how it was considered, but
yeah, that was a little weird when they had essentially the intro to the show again. And
right. So
the show was called a different name.
Right.
quote
So
unquote,
the first hour was Raw is War, and the second hour is the War Zone.
which weird to have two different names, and it might have been better if we were watching it live back then, because we might have been able to tell the differences in a maturity rating for the shows.
Right. Well, they never had them pop up, but I'm wondering if that's what it was about, the ratings, because Nitro actually did the same thing too. Whenever their next hour would start, even if they're in the middle of a match, their pyro would go off again, and then like that little Nitro beat would play.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying it might have been better for us to if we had seen it live, because
I probably did, but
right, because we would have seen the TV ratings show up.
oh no, they didn't do those back in the day.
Some of the Raws around this time still had them show up.
Did they? I don't remember those.
They come up a couple of times on the WWE network,
All right, maybe.
but it's odd.
Yep. So we switch announcers as well. We get rid of Kevin Kelly and Michael Cole, and we get James Cornette instead.
Good.
Yeah, that's definitely a switch for the better. We have Owen come out for an interview with Vince.
Yeah, and that, to be honest, that did nothing for me.
It was a decent interview for Owen. He wasn't always the best on the mic.
I mean, starting the whole Blackheart thing was kind of cool.
Well, this was way after that.
Well, that he's calling himself now the
he's like, you can call me a Blackheart. Yeah, you can call me a whatever. Yeah.
Which, okay, I guess, but there wasn't really much to it.
I mean, honestly, what they were trying to do was take all of that heat coming off of Survivor Series and him screwing Brett, trying to get Owen a push out of it and make a second Stone Cold.
Which, I mean, probably would have worked if they kept with it.
Yeah, unfortunately, what they let happen was they let DX get over on him, and it never went anywhere.
Yeah, and then he joined the Nation.
Yerp.
But anyway.
All right, next up, we have our third match of the evening. The Sultan, accompanied by the Iron Sheik, versus Tom Brandi.
Which, mind you, during all of this, everything that we've said so far, they're bringing in little hints of, don't forget, Stone Cold has 30 minutes to...
Oh, yeah, they've been going through the Stone Cold countdown. They've been going through Stone Cold has left the building. He's been spotted on such and such a highway. Oh, he's now at such and such a point.
So, yeah, as we're talking about this Sultan and Tom Brandi match, right? Tom Brandi?
Yep, Tom Brandi.
I had to look him up. I had no idea who he was.
Salvatore Sincere and absolutely nothing since.
Yeah. Aside from that, he occasionally, I believe he was the second Patriot. And
okay.
Yeah.
I guess that's an accomplishment in its own right.
And was, he still kind of wrestles every now and then as the Patriot until he got sued by the first Patriot. But
all right.
Anyway, I also had to look up who the Sultan was because I had no idea.
You fool.
Yeah.
How do you not know? All right, who's the Sultan?
It's Rikishi.
Yes, it is.
I was a little shocked to find out that it was Rikishi.
You can tell by his sweet dance moves?
Yeah.
All that dance the Sultan does?
I guess. If that's what you want to call it.
It's a big Samoan dude. Who else could it be?
Well, I can't tell he's Samoan with a mask on his face.
Come on now. You've been watching wrestling long enough. You should be able to recognize a Samoan when you see one.
Not when he's walking out with the Sheik. That throws me off altogether.
Well, the Sheik will throw you off your game. That's what he does.
Yeah, this was a forgettable match, to be honest.
Utterly forgettable. I mean, I guess it helps push the feud between Mark Marrow and Tom Brandi when Marrow comes out and low blows him after.
Mark Marrow's a joke.
He seems like a nice enough guy. His character in WCW was kind of hilarious, and he played it up well. He was a talented athlete. It seems like he came around about 10 to 15 years too late.
Yeah.
If Marrow had been around in the late 70s, early 80s, I think he would have really been something.
But he wasn't.
He wasn't. So, for those of you that didn't know, Mark Marrow used to be known as Johnny B. Bad in WCW, and it was basically Little Richard, the musician, except he could fight.
Ugh.
It was really weird. He was very flamboyant, very over the top, but the dude was in great shape, and he was a legitimate boxer, and he had some skills. So apparently he's doing quite well for himself as like a motivational speaker or real estate salesman or something now.
Yeah, he was doing a lot of motivational stuff after he had his major drug problem, like half of the roster did at this point.
Right. So good for him. Glad he did something great with himself. All right. So after this match, we actually finally catch up with Steve Austin.
Oh yay! This is when shit actually starts to happen. Is this before or after the McMahon video package?
This is right before.
Okay. So Austin's on a bridge, and he's got scuba gear that he's throwing off the side of the bridge.
Got a cell phone that he chucks off into the water.
A pager that apparently he stole off of The Rock's pants when he wasn't looking.
Oh, so the nation is in the ring, by the way, for this whole thing.
Yes, they're watching it on the screen with the rest of the arena. And then all of a sudden, he picks up the IC belt.
And lets The Rock know that if he wants this belt, he can come get it.
And hauls it all over the side of the bridge and into the lake.
And
Or
hooks
river.
it into the river. And so apparently, A, real IC belt. And
Yeah.
B, it's still there as far as anyone knows.
WWE has not confirmed or denied if they have ever gotten the belt out of the river.
I can't fathom they would have, because that belt, as nice as it was, doesn't cost more than $1,000.
Right.
And it would have cost more than $1,000 to get someone out there to dredge the river.
Right. I think it's probably still there. Maybe that should be an episode we do, conspiracy theories about wrestling.
Ooh. We should go find that belt.
See if we can find it and dig it out.
We're
of
going to
the
go
river.
Indiana Jones that belt.
I mean, I'd be down with it.
It'd be an interesting vacation.
Right.
Do you know how to scuba dive? I'm not good at scuba.
I'm not either, but I don't even know where this belt was. Where were they for this?
I'm sure we can figure out which. I'm sure they say which river it was.
Weren't they in like Delaware or something weird like that?
Yes. So they were in the Northeast. So yeah, we could drive there and make a weekend of it or something. Get arrested swimming in this nasty river, I'm sure.
So this is kind of the kickoff of things are changing with Raw.
Yeah, we're really starting to get some entertainment going here. It's not just wrestling. Now we're having big moments outside of the ring, outside of the arena.
Right. So the next IC belt would eventually be the precursor to the oval IC belt that was around for quite a bit of time. However, this one was blue and had the old school block logo on it. Then it would eventually end up being a black strap with the old school block logo, and then it would be what we know as the black one with the globe and the scratch logo on it.
Gotcha.
After this is kind of a solidifying. Well, I should say this first. We don't get that new belt until Mania.
Yeah, we
4 months later.
We're just without an IC belt for quite a while. We have a People's Champion.
The Rock is technically the champion, and I think this is where he starts even more so using the People's Champion, because he doesn't need the belt to say that he's the People's Champion.
Right.
But we don't get that new belt until Mania of '98.
That's quite a haul.
So then we get another video package.
Yep, we get a weird kind of, I want to say it's a promo, but it's almost more of a formal announcement.
And it's Vince McMahon backstage in front of a backdrop,
just addressing the audience,
talking about how things are going to change in WWE.
We're here for a
WWF.
new generation of programming that doesn't take the audience's intelligence for granted. It doesn't insult the audience, and it pushes in a bold new direction.
And what's the tagline that they used for this? Was it like, this is the cure
for the common show? Yes.
And you could kind of take this. Actually, you couldn't even kind of. This was the official start of the Attitude Era.
Right. If there's always kind of debate about, when did it really start? Was it the Austin 316 promo? Was it this event, that event, yada yada? This is the absolute latest you could ever market as, because this is officially, like, this is the company announcing, hey, this is our new creative direction. Much more adult-oriented, much more...
They even say that
Yeah.
we advise some parental discretion.
Right, basically saying Raw is no longer going to be for kids. We will have weekend programming that will be plenty fine for kids to watch. You're going to want to maybe not have kids watching Raw.
Yeah. And this is also shortly hereafter when the Scratch logo shows up.
Well, it's already showing up a bit, I believe.
It's showing up on the corner of the screen. However, if you look at the turnbuckles, it's still the block logo on the corner.
Still kind of the blocky, old school one. Yep,
Yeah.
fair enough.
And it's the same one that's on the announcer tables as well. But the Scratch logo is showing up various places without much people noticing.
Without it being the official one, yeah. All right. So after that, we come back, and we have some gentlemen rapping their way down to the ring.
Los Boricuas. Ugh.
Yep. Los Boricuas coming down to the ring, rapping in Spanish. I don't know why that wasn't their gimmick.
No. Honestly, I kind of stopped watching at this point.
They rap their way down to the ring, and then Steve Blackman comes out and wins with a German suplex.
Woo.
Yep. Los Boricuas didn't even stay out there. Like, it was just Jose Estrada, I believe, was the gentleman's name. It was just a one-on-one match when, like, the gang leaves. So, I whatever.
Doesn't make sense. But anyway.
Then we have the main event of the evening. Tag team match between D-Generation X against the Legion of Doom.
And, of course, earlier in the night, we got a Hawk promo.
Yep. Can't have a Hawk promo without his own, well. And,
So,
yeah.
again, I didn't see this match. I had lost interest.
It was a fine match. Near the end, what ends up happening is the New Age Outlaws interfere. They bring out some clippers. They shave half of Hawk's mohawk, since he kind of has that split mohawk.
So he's kind of got one off-center mohawk?
He has one off-center mohawk, and they quad powerbomb Animal through the announce table.
Oh, so they shielded before the shield.
Yes, it was
Okay.
a Cerebus bomb, except with 4 people instead of 2 or 3. Sorry.
Okay.
Then they also take turns jumping off the top rope and hitting Hawk with various moves, kind of saying, "Ooh, that was good. Can you top me doing this?" So, which kind of funny that they set the seeds for the New Age Outlaws to join DX months down the road.
Right.
So it was just kind of cementing everyone as, "Ooh, these are the mean, nasty people." So, all right, that was pretty much Raw. So overall, you weren't, so as you said earlier, you weren't really a fan during this time. What did you think of it overall?
Me being the smart mark that I am now, I was not a big fan, other than for the moments that happened, like the Austin hucking the belt over the side of the bridge.
Right. So there was some cool stuff, and looking at this now, people that clamor for the Attitude Era, rose-colored glasses, buddy.
Yeah.
This was fine, but all of the problems that we had with this week's Raw, I think you could easily say a lot of the same things about this current show, about this show that we just reviewed.
Yeah, I would agree with that. However, you have bigger stars back then that could carry a show through the lull points. As of right now, especially without the belt being on the show and your main 3 guys down and out or not showing up,
Yeah.
I'm not saying Seth isn't a big enough star. Seth is carrying Raw on his back single-handedly, I would say, at this point.
Nearly single-handedly, yes.
But when you don't have Brock with the belt, you don't have Braun, you don't have Roman, it's getting to the point where it's just
Yeah. But again, but kind of the same thing about this show. Yeah, the Austin thing running through the whole show definitely saved it, because it gave it a kind of a thread to pull through some of those lulls, where that's kind of what the Monday Night Wars really did. And then they kind of keep feeding you this thing. So, stay tuned. We got Austin coming up. Stay tuned. We got Austin doing something. He'll be doing something eventually.
I could see that, but my counterpoint would be, again, we have Austin and The Rock throughout pretty much the whole thing. And if I'm a kid back during these times, or even my age, 27 years old around this time, I'm waiting to see what happens with DX.
Well, right, but that's kind of the thing is they had they had the major Rock Austin thing kind of keeping you there, and then once that paid off, because we still had show after that, we had the DX thing coming up, so there's even a little bit more for you still.
Right.
You had enough stuff going on to carry the entire show without it being all on one guy's shoulders.
Yeah, and it was back then. I feel like it would have been a little bit easier to carry a show like that, whereas now it's not going as well as they had hoped.
No, and I mean, first off, it was only 2 hours instead of 3.
Right.
How bad would this have been if there had been another hour in the middle of this show where they kept teasing Austin? Austin, you've got 2 hours.
Yeah, that would have stretched it a little bit. But I think they could have, with the talent that they had back then, they probably could have done more. Maybe Triple H has a match before.
He's in the final match in the evening.
That's true. I forgot about that. Maybe China has a match before.
China didn't do anything except blow people every now and then, which apparently for her talent level was for the best.
Fair point. Well, maybe they actually do something with Michinoku again later on in the night with
maybe you actually have some of the other guys in the nation have a match.
Yeah, like Farouk.
Right. Like we had
Kama Mustafa.
D'Lo Brown. Right. We could have done a lot more with what we had. I mean, Undertaker showed up for 30 seconds, had a promo. Give him a match later in the evening or something.
Have Kane have a match.
Oh, what a concept that would have been.
Right. So, anyway.
So, yep. Anything else? What would you overall grade it? What would you say?
What's my grade scale? Like high school A, B, C?
Yeah, grade it.
I wouldn't give it any more than a B minus.
Yeah, that's about what I was thinking. And a lot of that was for Austin's stuff.
Oh, of course.
A lot of that is coming from Austin stuff. Without the Austin stuff, it would have been weaker. It wouldn't have been awful. Again, the Owen Hart thing had a lot more potential than it ended up having.
Yeah, they could have done give Owen a match later on in the night if we're going 3 hours.
Right.
But yeah, it was something.
All right. Plug time,
especially because we got TLC coming up, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that.
Oh, I'm sure.
Next week. All right, so to listen to us, Spotify, Google Play, and iTunes, This Week in Wrestling History.
On Facebook, This Week in Wrestling History, or TWIWH. Twitter,
you got WrestleHistPod.
And if you want, send us some comments, give us some feedback at WrestlingHistoryPodcast@gmail.com.
Yep, I think that's it.
All right, we're history.